We have invited talk from Dr. T.S. Dewan Singh, Scientific Officer, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, Mumbai, and Regional Chair Study Forum for Advanced Technology Northeast. He will be joining us through online mode.
Respected Professor A. Navachandra Singh, Controller of Exams, EM University, Professor Shaikha, R. Shaikha, Principal Lilong Haoreibi College, and Sri K. Singh, Head Department of Physics, Professor R. Shaikha, Dr. Arun Brims for inviting me for this particular seminar program. So, first of all, this type of similar program we introduced at Oriental College, Imphal in November 2021, last year. So that program was sponsored by our office, AERB. We sponsor it and we launched this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav series. And our office is very much happy, delighted to know that the college in Manipur are still continuing such good works, missions at various colleges. And from our ERB side also, we will try to support such type of the programs in future. So on the behalf of Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, Mumbai, so I would like to present my talk on this particular topic, radiation regulatory and the radiation safety. So interestingly, the topic of this talk is selected by the organizers, and we hope that there is much need, requirement for such type of discussions, particularly in the Northeast states, where the number of radiation facilities is growing up, and still it needs to grow in the region, and the requirement for the regulatory is much important to understand what are its regulatory requirements. So let me start my presentation. What is the structure of the regulations in our country, India? In our country, India, the first principal requirement is legislation, and it is defined by the Atomic Energy Act 1962. So this Act 1962, under this Act, the detailed requirements are laid down under this Act, and such as Regulation Atomic Energy Radiation Protection Rule 2004. So Radiation Protection Rule 2004 is framed under this Atomic Energy Act 1962. And after these acts and rule, so practice specific requirements or guidance are formed, that is code or practice. One for example is, say in Manipur, radiotherapy center is there in RIMS Imphal. So that RIMS Imphal radiotherapy is a medical practice. At the same time, there is gamma irradiation chamber, GIC, at Manipur University. So the purpose of use of GIC is for the R&D purpose. The use of radiation at RIMS Imphal is for the treatment of cancer patients. So now these practice specifics are different, purposes are different, but both use radiation. So what are the protocols, what are the rules and the requirements are to be followed at RIMS Imphal, what are the requirements are to be enforced, followed at Manipur University. So these requirements are again further defined by the safety codes. So this safety code is, it comes under the radiation protection rule. So first let's try to understand some provisions, some sections of this Act 1962. This section 1416 says, for handling for use of any radioactive source in the country, it needs a license, written consent. That means without written consent, license, no one can use any type of radioisotopes, radioactive materials in India. So it is clearly written in section 14 and 16. And section 17 says, there is a power to inspect these facilities That means the facility has taken license, has taken consent, and they started operating facility. Say example, at Manipur University, now they are operating gamma irradiation chamber. And again, what type of safety related issues are there in this gamma irradiation chamber? So again, it has to be inspected by the regulatory body. So regulatory body has the power to inspect these facilities, so it comes under section 17. Section 24, 25 and 26, what it says? It mentions about offenses and penalties. So what it means, if the facilities violate the regulatory requirements and the safety requirements are not met, the required actions can be initiated against the institute under this section 24, 25 and 26. The section 27 says there is a power to appoint competent authority. So in this case, the competent authority for regulation of the radiation facilities in our country is Chairman of Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, and its headquarters is at Mumbai. So now this particular Atomic Energy Radiation Protection Rule 2004 is quite important, and this rule is formed under the said Act 1962, and it has so many provisions, say up to 36, and I have selected some of the very relevant things for the establishment of the new facilities. The first one is the license, authorizations and the registration consent. So to establish any facility, if you establish of the lab, say nuclear radioisotopes lab at your college or university, you have to take license, authorization from AERB, and after taking this permission, if you want to change some modification in your facility, further it needs permission from the AERB, and this is particular radiation symbol or warning sign. It should be displayed to the facilities which are installing the radioisotopes, radioactive materials. Those limits and other regulatory requirement constraints are to be met. Those limits in the sense, any person who is working at that particular field, so there is a maximum permissible limit for them. Say for example, if a person working at the radiotherapy facility at RIMS, this worker should have some limitation of dose. Generally, the dose received by the workers is much low, and it is almost at the background radiation level. So that has to be ensured. And there is safety standard and safety codes are issued. And another thing is that the minimum age limit for the working in such facilities are again defined. So these are some provisions of this radiation protection rule. And under this Act 1962, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board was established, and now Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, Mumbai, is responsible for enforcement of these regulatory requirements to the facilities using radiations in the country. So now under this again radiation protection rule, the competent authority again further issue the safety directives. So one such example of safety directive is annual effective dose limit is set as 20 millisievert per year. So it is an average over 5 consecutive years, and in any year it should not exceed not more than 30 millisievert. So this is just the requirement. And the dose limit for member of the public is 1 millisievert in a year. So any public, it should not get not more than 1 millisievert. So these are just the requirement. So now, what is the regulatory process? This regulatory process, so it is very important, and everybody who wish to establish the radiation facilities should know what type of the regulatory process is required. So our regulatory process, it can be simplified in 2 ways. The first one is the consenting process. The second one is regulatory inspection. So under consenting process, the first one is layout approval. So just an example, you want to establish a nuclear medicine lab at your institute. First one, you have to make a layout, site layout. You have to make a drawing of that particular layout, and this layout has to be submitted to AERB. And after taking approval of this layout, the next step you have to follow is authorization for source or unit. So in the second step, now you have made your construction, you have completed your facility, then now you can start procurement or import of radioactive source. Then you can start. So next step is commissioning. So all those things you have to do commissioning, you have to do many tests to confirm that your system operates. You can submit your application through online, and there is a provision for tracking, online tracking of the submitted application, what is the status of my applications. So all these things now you can do, and finally it is e-approval, paperless. You can download the approval from your website. This particular piece is about e-licensing of radiation applications, ILORA. So you can visit our AERB website, www.aerb.gov.in. Then you can find this particular ILORA. So now the next one is we have briefly discussed about what is regulation, who is regulating radiation facilities in our country, what are different types of the consenting process. So these things we have discussed. So now let us try to see some example how we can establish radiation facility and what type of the requirements to be fulfilled. Let us study one example. So one such example is one university or hospital or college want to establish a radioisotope lab like this as shown in the PPT. They want to establish such type of facility. So what to do? What I have to do? Whether how can I establish such facilities? What are the requirements? So what type of the approvals I have to obtain from AERB? So let us see. So now first of all, for radioisotopes lab, what is radioisotopes labs? Let's try to understand it. This lab, it has multiple use. The first one is in medical application, that is in diagnostic, and one is therapeutics. So here also it is used, diagnostic radiology and therapeutics. In the research area, this is quite important for the colleges and the universities. So you can do a lot of research in biomedical, agriculture, industrial, of course. Here also you can do a lot of research using these radioisotopes. The last one is educational purpose. This can be used as a purpose for teaching your student. For that also you can establish lab. So all these three major domains, these labs can be established. Now let us see. And now before establishing lab, we should note what are the types of the sources. Two types of sources are there. One is sealed source, another is unsealed source. Can you see this picture? This bottle, small bottle, it is an unsealed source. These unsealed sources are mostly used in nuclear medicine where it is directly given orally or injected to the patient for imaging its internal organs. To imagine its internal organ, this type of the source is used. This is unseen source. So it is widely used. And the different types of the radioisotopes are there for this unseen source: iodine 131, technetium 99 sulfur 35, phosphorus 32. So these are all different types of the sources are there. Another form of source is the sealed source. That is, source is double encapsulated, the source may be in solid form, it is in encapsulated form, so that it's not released into the environment in any conditions. Unless and until it is broken in the lab. Okay. So one such example of use of the cell source is the radiotherapy. This is particularly radiotherapy machine. If you visit the RIMS Impal, you can see such type of machine, how this machine is used for treatment of cancer. So their cell source is used there, and cell source is here in the head of this machine. And so these are two types. Now, establishment of radioisotopes lab. So there are three types of the isotopes lab. As per your requirement, it depends on what is the purpose of use of your source. So the first one is the type 1, type 2, type 3, and again all these establishments, again you have to follow all these regulatory requirements. The first one is Radiation Protection Rule 2004. Second one is Safe Disposal of Radioactive Waste Rule, because whatever radioactive waste generated at your institute, you cannot simply throw into your garbage. So you have to do necessary actions as per the provisions provided in the rules 1987. And another thing requirement is ERB safety guide, consenting process for radiation facilities. This is quite important, this guide. Another one is the safety guide entitled Management of the Spent Radioactive Source and Radioactive Waste, this one. And the security of the radioactive source in the radiation facilities. So what are the security measures you have established in your facilities? So all these requirements are laid down in the safety codes and guide. Now, let us now see about this particular one, type of the source. And now, very important is planning radioisotopes lab. Actually, this program is required in the form of workshop, and it is very difficult to present the whole requirements in this very short, say 20-30 minutes. Anyway, I am just briefing this short requirement. If any of you are quite interested in this particular field, and you can join the specific training programs conducted at Baba Atomic Research Center, Mumbai, or sometimes we can organize workshop in Manipur also. So the purpose of planning is easy performance, optimization of the resource and the safety. So here important points to be remembered for the planning. Why I particularly focus on it, because there are some facilities now started establishing in the northeast region also. The major problem faced for the initial stage is layout approvals, means how to design shielding requirement for the facilities, how to design it, how to select the site, what are the criteria are to be used. So the important things are what type of source you are supposed to handle, whether you are going to handle cobalt-60 source or iridium-192 or say P32, what type of source. Next important point which you have to take into account is what is its physical form, whether it is in liquid, gases, solid form, sealed or unsealed, and what type of the radiation hazard it may cause, internal or external hazard, and the nature of the operation. So all these points, factors have to be taken into account, and shielding requirement. So shielding is a mechanism, it is a way to reduce the radiation level below the permissible limit. So areas with public occupancy site, it should be less than 1 microsievert per hour. Here we should know what we have put this limit is sometimes is much lower than the natural background radiation level. So natural background radiation levels are measured across the country, and Haoreibi has given one such project to Manipur also. As per the report from this national background radiation level, this level in Manipur is quite low. So again, the Haoreibi limit keeping for this radiation facility is still lower than the background radiation level, 1 microsievert per hour. Areas with the radiation worker occupancy is 10 microsievert per hour. So if the facility make the shielding in such way and make the plan in such way, then the facility is much safe, very safe, quite safe, much useful to the benefit, for the benefit of society, for the benefit of the institute and the people who are quite interested in R&D. So shielding is any material that can absorb radiations, and depending on the type of the radiation, different shielding materials are used. Different types of the radiations are alpha, beta and the gamma radiation. For gamma radiation, generally we use lead, concrete, brick, tungsten. So tungsten is very good shielding material. Stainless steel, these are quite used, and for the facility walls mostly use concrete, reinforced concrete. For beta radiation, its penetration is quite low, so generally we use perspex or plastic. But one thing we should know for the shielding design of the beta radiation is that beta radiation, after interaction with the metal, it produces brimstone. So that brimstone one should take into account of shielding of this brimstone. That is what the designers should think of it. So these are some typical shielding materials in the workplace. You might have seen these things. So this is the L bench here. This is the particular source here. This is a lead glass. You can see the lead glass, and this lead glass is used to seal the radiation. This is the particular one. So now this fume, actually this is required for the facility which are using unsealed source, for unsealed source, like those who are used in nuclear medicine. So distance actually in radiation, there is 3 steps we should remember all times for the safety and protection. These 3 rules, very simple, is time, distance and shielding. Time. If the duration contact with the radiation is low, then you will get low radiation. That means low contact, low interaction with radiation, low dose. Distance, if the distance is more, you will receive less dose. If you are quite near to the source, you will get more dose. It is just simple. If I stand just near to a person who is speaking, then I can hear his or her voice. If I am very far away, I can't hear. So like this, if you are very far from the source, radiation source, then those will be negligible or it will be very low. Shielding requirement. Sometimes it's very difficult to maintain distance and the time, because some procedure needs you have to stand near to the source. Some procedure require handling of source, say more than 1 or 2 minutes. So under such condition, how can we protect ourselves from the radiation? So that can be met with the using of shielding method. So qualified manpower. Now coming for a very important part, when you want to establish radiation facility in your facility, you should have qualified manpower. The persons who are having trained in handling of radioactive material, so facility operators, servicing and maintenance, radiological safety professionals, conventional safety professionals. So these are the different types of professionals. So in simple way, let me just share, say at Manipur University, for example, they are using gamma irradiation chamber, GIC. Then who will operate it? Any person who got training at Baba Atomic Research Center and who just have RSO certificate, that is Radiological Safety Officer. So this is one such requirement for handling. And another example for use of radiation in medical facilities, one example you can see in the RIMS. So the facility should have the medical physicists, oncologists, and radiotherapy technicians. So these three persons are known as radiological safety professionals, and they should be registered in INORA. Next is work procedures. So radiological monitoring, the monitoring means measure how much dose is received by the person. So TLD, personal monitoring service, TLD. So you can see such type of the TLD, and if you haven't seen such TLD, college students can visit to the RIMS Impal, and the student can see how personnel monitoring is used by the physicists and the radiotherapy technologists working at the cancer hospital, at the cancer facilities. The area, workplace, it should be quite monitored. And the very important one is waste management, radioactive waste management. See, now again we have to follow these things, and this is also, if you follow the safety norms strictly, then we can control it, of course, we can control it. Radiological emergency preparedness. See, under our operational control measures, we can achieve the safety. However, emergency may arise at any case, in any situation. Even when we are sitting in the room, it may happen. Earthquake may be there. So these things are sometimes uncertainties. Like this, in the radiation facilities also emergency may arise. So to handle such type of the emergency, we should have pre-planned programs. So it should include what type of the scenarios it may take place. If the emergency arises, what to do, how we can control it. So these type of things we can do. But please keep in mind, the radioisotope labs used at college and the university is quite safe, really safe, because that is mostly reference source whose activity is the microcurie level. The dose is almost negligible, much below the background.